My name is Glenn Cummins, and I'm the Director of the Center for Communications Research here at Texas Tech University. With respect to eye tracking, my most recent project has been examining viewer attention to content warning labels or content advisory labels on television programs. You've probably seen, a lot of people see them and don't pay attention to them. At the start of every TV show, in the top left of the screen, a little label comes up and tells you what that program's rating is, what kind of audience that program is appropriate for. What we've done recently in our eye tracking lab is look to see, are people paying attention to those labels, and are there other types of labels that might be more effective at capturing people's attention and letting people know what those programs might be about and what type of content might be within those shows. And the effectiveness of these advisories is still kind of in debate. Not a lot of people pay attention to them. Even those people that do see them don't always know exactly what it is that they're trying to say. So what we're doing in the lab right now is looking at whether or not people actually pay attention to these program advisories in content, and also examine maybe there's some other types of labels that are more effective at letting the audience know what might be in a program. So we're looking at attention to different types of advisory labels, and whether that varies as a function of the nature of the content, the nature of the label itself. The interesting thing about these advisories is really there are two different audiences that are critical in studying. One is parents, because in a lot of cases these advisories are specifically developed for parents, so they can control what their kids watch. They can control what types of content they're exposed to, or what kind of content they shouldn't be exposed to. So that's one group, is parents. The other group that's really of interest with this type of research is young adults and teens. There's been a lot of research within the academic community on labels and the effect of merely putting a label on content on somebody's attraction to that content. When you put a label on it, that for some viewers, that makes it more attractive. They want to watch it more than they would if that label was absent. So that effect is obviously pronounced, most pronounced for young adults and teenage audiences. So really those are the two groups that are of most interest when you're talking about this particular type of content. I don't know that this one study would result in a particular change, but nonetheless this is something that ever since the labels were first introduced over a decade ago, it's something that's continually revisited. The government continues to be interested in how they can protect critical audiences, again young adults, from seeing content that they shouldn't be seeing. So it certainly can contribute to that discussion, contribute to that debate, and possibly let us know about some new way of approaching audiences, some new way of letting the viewer know what to expect from a program. The way eye tracking works, and there are a lot of different technologies that can measure where somebody's looking at any given moment in time. The way eye tracking works in our laboratory is a person can sit down at a computer monitor like we have here behind me, and there's a small camera located just below that monitor that is shining infrared light into somebody's eyes, and that infrared light is something that we can't see, but it's reflected off the back of the eye, and our technology allows us to see the angle of that reflection and use some of that math to do some really quick geometry to calculate where on a screen somebody is looking. So we have a lot of ways of measuring whether somebody's paying attention to television, but eye tracking is unique in that it lets you know specifically where on a screen somebody is looking. In the past, researchers would simply record how much time the eyes were on screen, whether you were looking at the screen or looking away at something else. This is a very precise measurement of exactly what within our visual field is capturing somebody's attention at a precise moment in time. Glasses aren't a deal breaker, actually. Glasses may or may not work. We don't automatically disqualify somebody who comes in with glasses. With this style of research, typically there's always going to be some people who simply can't be calibrated for physiological reasons. Their eyes simply are difficult to calibrate in a reliable sense. So we have to recruit more people than we actually need for any given study. But we've worked with a lot of grad students and have them trained pretty well so that we don't have to dismiss very many people from our laboratory. The type of content that people see in this laboratory really varies depending on the nature of the study and what's going on. With some of the recent research that I've done looking at content labeling, it was important that we chose programs that people were not familiar with, because that obviously influences your perception of what the show is going to contain. And we specifically wanted to focus on the influence of the program advisory label itself and not the program content. So we picked programs that people weren't familiar with. We looked at some BBC programming that obviously was in English and was popular, but may not be stuff that students here are familiar with. So we sometimes have to be creative with the cover story that we use when we bring people into the lab to do this type of research, because you don't want to explicitly tell somebody up front that, hey, we're looking at your attention to this label, because that naturally would bias their attention to that label. Right now what we're specifically testing is use of a graphical representation or a symbolic representation of what's going on within that program. If you paid attention to those content advisories in the past, typically they've been age-based ratings, maybe a rating that says TV 14, which would denote that it's appropriate for an audience 14 and up. But right underneath that, there are a series of letters that will tell you about what's in that program. F, V, D, different letters that I kind of refer to as alphabet soup, because we all have some sense of what those letters may mean, but public understanding and knowledge of the precise nature of what those letters are trying to tell us is pretty vague. So we're exploring specific graphic representations of different content forms to see if that better communicates what you might can see in what you might can expect in a television program.
Cool.
The value of eye tracking across a lot of different studies, across a lot of different types of media and different disciplines, is that it measures attention, and it measures attention in a very precise way. So it doesn't matter what type of effect you're talking about, whether you're talking about persuasion as a type of effect, whether you're simply talking about communicating information to an audience. Eye tracking can tell you specifically how much attention somebody is paying to a particular screen element. So it has benefit across all parts of mass communication. It has benefit to all different areas of research within our discipline.